Welcome to North Dakota After Dark. We are mostly all in North Dakota, and it is after dark. And we are really pleased to be joined today well, I'm not supposed to say what episode we're on anymore, according to our producer. So we are in the teens, and we're very pleased to welcome to the program Alexis Greeves. Alexis, thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Thursday evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks. So, Alexis, before we get started, if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do, and then we'll ask you some questions and hopefully have a great podcast.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me on. So my name's Alexis, and I am a licensed professional clinical counselor, LPCC, in the state of Minnesota. And I'm a registered play therapist and supervisor. I've just been figuring out that I graduated with my master's degree in 1999. So coming up this May will be my 25 years of postmaster's work in the field of doing therapy work with children and families. And then my latest venture is I've just started something called Campfire Family Coaching, where I'm kind of taking a lot of my expertise from the world of child therapy, and I want to make it a little more accessible to families who could really benefit from a lot of what therapists can offer, but not have to be within the realm of psychotherapy. So anyway, that's just my latest venture, and
That's wonderful.
yeah, yeah, thank
So,
you.
the episode that will air just before this one, Alexis, and usually we're on about a 10-day hold for our producer slash wife slash roommate to get the episodes cleaned up to her satisfaction. We talked about tryouts. This is a little while ago for all the hockey families in town here. Everybody went through tryouts, and one of the things that we mentioned as a group is that you kind of feel almost a palpable sense of anxiety throughout. I don't want to say throughout town, but throughout the little group of people that hangs out together through hockey. A lot of worrying, both amongst the kids and then amongst the parents, about how things were going to shake out and how everyone would handle it. And as I understand, you dabble in things like that as well, about how to help families navigate some of those pitfalls. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I certainly work. I would say that, most of my work is related to helping families manage anxiety. I think that certainly something all of us can relate to. If you don't have anxiety, you haven't lived through a global pandemic. So I certainly think that, it's common. Um, and, I can certainly appreciate that when they're high stress moments, there's going to be, what I find interesting is the idea of, um, children experiencing anxiety and really looking to their parents to help them um, find calm and regulation in their nervous systems. But then when they look to their parents and their parents are equally as anxious, you're creating a system of anxiety rather than one in which um, the adult is there to regulate the child. So I can appreciate that's what's happening in these moments, in these experiences.
And I think one of the things we thought we talked about too is how sometimes that anxiety kind of calms down once the season starts, but then I do some coaching, and of course, all of our kids play. I think all of us have multiple kids that play at different levels too. So come the weekend, and there's tournaments and games and some contentious games. It just seems to be an ebb and flow throughout the week of getting through the week of practice, and then getting to the games for the weekend, and then sort of experiencing that cycle over and over. So I thought maybe I'd let the other guys kind of talk about some of the experiences before I switch back to it. But again, it's one of the things I thought we'd make a focus of the episode too, is just trying to, one, how, if you could explain to us a little bit about how those dynamics work, which I think you've just touched on, and then again, where, how both kids and parents might help tackle some of those issues.
Oh, for sure.
And I guess the follow-up I had to that is as far as the kids go, I think Kelly and I and Corey have kids that are, under 10. From your experience, when do some of the kids start to get into these issues of anxiety? Is it real young guys, or does it come as they get closer to the teen years?
That was going to be one of my questions as
Oh, I'm
well, is
sorry, Kelly.
where you're seeing anxiety, is it younger and younger? Because, I mean, pressures have they changed on kids, so I was just curious.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, we can see anxiety in children from the time they're infants. And I think a lot of that has to do with how well a parent can. I mean, if you think about an infant being cared for, you're all parents, so you all had babies at one point, I'm guessing, unless you, of course, adopted older children. But if you think about a baby who is crying, the baby can't ever self-regulate, right? We would never kind of expect a crying infant to kind of get over it, to use their tools, other kind of things we might say for older children. We would immediately, we almost have a biological urge to move towards a baby to calm it down. And the only way that somebody can calm a baby is to feel or to is to be calm. Right. So if I kind of scoop up a baby, my body has to sway, at a rate that's really going to cause that baby's body to start to kind of match my own. I'm going to be taking deep breaths. I'm going to be using a soft voice. It's okay. We're okay here. I'm going to be attuned to the baby and know how to respond to whatever the specific need is. And, I think about anxiety as kids are aging is can very much be about how well is the caregiver responding in this moment to whatever is happening for the child. And so one of the things I'll say to parents as kids get older is how well are you attuning to what's happening inside of your child? Like, how well do you know the internal landscape of your child's experience? And then how well can you respond to that? In schools, I hear a lot of people talking about using this term self-regulation. Are you all familiar with that concept of self-regulation? Well, one of the things I think about is, I don't know if there is such a thing as self-regulation. What I would posit is when we're talking about self-regulation, what we're actually talking about is co-regulation, right? That idea of the adult who's regulating, who's loaning their calm self to their child. And the child gets enough of those experiences that it becomes embodied. So that if I'm a kindergartner, or if I'm 5 and I'm going off to kindergarten for the first time, and I'm nervous about leaving my mom, I am in fact going to be bringing my mom internally, right? Like I'm bringing mom on the inside to school. And then when I kind of get to the end of my day, there she is again, kind of fill me back up again. And we do this as adults too. Like we all have our co-regulators. I get into a fender bender, the first person I call is my husband. And he's going to be very calm with me on the phone. Hey, it's okay. Let's figure this out. If I call him and he goes, it's like, it's only going to make things worse. So anyway, kids experience anxiety I just see it at all ages. And the first thing I'm tuned into is how well is this caregiver child dyad able to experience this co-regulation. I know it's a long-winded answer, but I hope that kind of gives an idea of how I think at least about the idea of anxiety.
Well, long-winded. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
So I think it's really helpful because I have two children, but my oldest is 12, and he's an extremely anxious child. He comes by that honestly because his mother's an extremely anxious person. But I couldn't agree with you more, because that's kind of what I've recently been discovering as well, is what am I doing to contribute to the anxiety? And those tactics have been really helpful. So it's like you're speaking directly to me. Even when you mentioned like a child being anxious at even little ages, I feel like my oldest from birth on has been an anxious child. He just is. It's just his nature. So to hear that is helpful. It's just to affirming, because sometimes it can feel like, especially when you see people with kids that are so go with the flow and so easy. I'm like, how do you get a kid to do that? I mean, and my youngest is much more relaxed, but there's just certain kids that I feel like, I mean, I know, like I said, I don't blame him for being prone to anxiety. I'm prone to anxiety. I feel terrible of all the things I could pass on to him, that was one of them. So
Yeah.
Well, just so you know, Alexis, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. I'm one step away from laying down on my couch and asking you, why am I such a jerk, and is it my parents' fault? But I'll ask you a real question. So as we're the parents of children who play at different levels of hockey, hockey in every youth sport nowadays it's multi-tiered, and there's levels of play and different directions. And how do kids survive in this world of tiered groupings? And you're an A or a B1 or a B with all of their cohorts, and managing that world at these lower and lower ages.
Yeah. Yeah. What a really important question. Well, I guess I'm gonna be curious with you. One of the things I think about as you say that is the idea of how much are we talking to children about this idea of achievement versus identity. And, like you can really excel in something or be on the learner's edge, right? Like we're kind of always growing and experiencing more and more mastery of anything. How much can we separate out that this is what I do versus this is who I am? Because I think that sometimes when children put too much of their identity, or they feel like other people are placing their identity on the thing that they do, when there is failure or hardship, or they just aren't placed in a tier where they would think that they belong, then that can start to affect a sense of their identity. But let me put that out to you. Does that resonate as I kind of think about that way?
It does.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, yes, to me it does. Yeah, that was it.
That was it, Kyle? That was the best you could muster?
That's all I said. That's literally all I've got.
So, so that dichotomy between your achievement and your identity. So when you're managing your child's expectations in reference to where they're at a given period of time in their development, in their mastery of a skill, we've talked to a lot of parents, and there can be a lot of consternation there, because they're, along with the child's experience, the parents in these social groups, they're just the same. So there's a belief of a social tiering amongst those different rankings. And so there's external pressures for a child to achieve at a higher level in youth sports now, because of the different social aspects the parents can get into. And you have a dual navigation of the child trying to figure out their own place at their own level, along with the parents wanting their child to be at a certain level for achievement, for social goals, for whatever. And that expression in your identity can get so wrapped into these things. And I'm not saying I haven't been there myself. It's such an interesting world to live in. And that's just one sport out of a year.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I do we just have to be so cautious as parents to not be putting the weight of our needs on our children, right? We have to work very hard to be separating out, this is a need that I have for my own sense of worth or my own sense of achievement, but it has to be separated from what my child can hold.
Well,
That's great. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Corey. I just want to circle back to
And that was great. Thank you. That's all I had, Kyle.
perfect.
That's all you got?
That's all we
That's
got.
all I
Yeah,
got.
right? I like it. Get right after it, Alexis. You talked about kind of off the hop about sort of understanding the child's internal landscape and some of the self-regulation. And one of the wrinkles I think that exists here too, applying your teaching to what goes on during the winter with hockey is, the kids also spend probably 5, sometimes 6 nights a week or significant amount of time with a coach. What do you think about a role a coach might play here? Understanding they don't know all of that internal landscape of the child, but then also there's sort of a unstated rule that the kid also has to listen to what the coach says and take that for good and bad, and just sort of inserting a third party into it here too, if you want to, if you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that the role of the coach is a really interesting one. I think a lot about let me say it this way. When I'm talking with children about hard things, one of the questions I often ask them is, who are your helpers? Who are your helpers? And children will often talk about the role of a coach for them as a helper. Now, it could be, they see them as a helper in getting better at the sport that they're playing. It could be that it's a relationship that it's a trusted adult that they respect and who treats them with dignity and sees something really beautiful in them. Um, and it can be a complicated relationship as well, right? Like, here is somebody who is in a position of authority, who's not a parent. So um so I'm thinking about that from the child's perspective. Now, as I think about the coach as an adult in a child's life, I think one of the things that all of us adults who are working with children have to consider is things are really different for kids post-COVID. I've been spending a lot of time, I think a lot of us child therapists have been thinking a lot about this idea of what does it mean? And I'll be curious to hear, because I think people in different parts of the country experienced the lockdown and the pandemic differently. But I think about, what does it mean for adults to speak in the lives of children who have missed a significant chunk of their development? And what I mean by that, as I'm sure that you all have experienced, is, for me, here we are a couple of years outside of that initial shutdown, and I still feel like, when I think back to March of 2020, like, I still have a feeling of vomit coming up my mouth, so, like, oh my gosh, that was so stressful. And the year that followed, but it was just a year in my 51 years. And for my kids, it was such a big piece of their life. So anyway, I know I'm rambling, but I'm just thinking about, as far as coaches go, for them to be able to appreciate some of the hardships that kids have experienced and how they might be showing up differently. And that I really encourage coaches and teachers and youth group workers and whoever else to be trying to get curious with kids as to why they might be showing up the way they're showing up.
Interesting. Okay. If
So
you could,
Alexis, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kyle. You're I think you were adding on to your thoughts.
yeah, just on that curious point of view too, I always find that an interesting one as well. Like you coach, you got 15 or 16 kids and they show up for games or practices in a different state almost every time. And I am often curious as to what's going on, but then I'm also wondering about how far to pry, because they're 11 and 12-year-old boys, and sometimes some of them have a lot to say and some of them you get a shoulder shrug, good or bad, right? And so it's an interesting thought. And one that I am, like I say, curious about, but just not sure how far to jump in, I guess. Especially at the age where they're like pushing back against mom and dad a little bit, and they're turning from boys into young men, and it's a awkward time, I think, for some of them too.
That's right. That's right. The other thing about that is some kids can really articulate well what's going on for them internally, and others just cannot.
Yeah.
Like I just had this afternoon, I had a therapy session with a 7th grader, and I really do not like doing therapy over Zoom. But just given circumstances, we had to have our session that way. And the whole session is me just asking question after question, and the 7th grader being like, I don't know. And then me saying like, it's okay not to know. I'll give you some time to think through. And this person sits there and goes, I really
You're
don't
a hero to do that, especially
really...
like 7th grade boys. That's that can be a nut that you can't crack. Like it's just you're asking every. I don't know. I don't know.
And the great thing about my work is I'm a play therapist. The thing I say to kids is you can tell me or you can show me. You don't have to use words, right? Like, as a matter of fact, sometimes words fall short. And I've got a lot of different tools that I use. But I just think about this. I had a friend of mine, he's a principal in elementary school, and he was telling me that one of the kids was just like having a really rough time, and the kid was removed from the classroom and brought into I don't know, some other kind of holding area. That's not the right way to call it, but a different space in the school. And this kid just kind of knocked everything off the shelves, and then the adult who was in there kind of moved out of the room to keep herself safe. And the principal was telling me that he walked in and just said to the kid, like, okay, we're stopping this right now. And the kid stopped and just took a breath, and the principal looked around the room and said, is this what it feels like on the inside? And the kid was like,
wow.
And the principal said, you know what? We're not going to work, because the kid was kind of like anticipating, like, and you're going to clean this up and, forget this nonsense. But instead the principal just said, yeah, you know what? Let's not worry about this room. Like, I'm more concerned about you.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, way to go, dude. Like, that is how, this is how we get kids to come around and reconnect with us. Because no doubt that kid was in a shame spiral. And when kids are feeling shame, they're just going to push us further and further away. And so when somebody can come in there and reconnect and say, you are more important than anything that you could do to mess this up. And then what happened was, and this is just the beauty of connecting with children, the kid said, kind of came, caught up himself kind of calm again and got some water, and then looked at the principal and said, I'm ready to clean up. Oh, did I go offline? Oh, sorry.
You're still here.
We can still hear you.
Okay. Okay. So the kid said to the principal, I'm ready to go clean it up now. And the principal said, let's do it together. So anyway, I start talking and then I lose track of what the initial question was. But well, anyway, I'll leave it.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's something in there.
Yeah, for sure.
So as sports parents, one of the key features that we have our children go through the process a lot of, and as Kyle mentioned, coaches as well, is how do you handle a child's experience with failure?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is my husband he when we started having kids, he said, "I've got our family motto." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I want them to fail young and fail often. I want them to fail young and I want them to fail often." And the more that they can experience failure and rebounding from failure and seeing that, like, we still love you, there's so many opportunities to learn and grow from this failure, um, the less frightening will be, right? The less frightening it will be later on. And if we're shielding our kids too much from failure when they're young, and I'm not talking about, we live in a culture, sadly, right now that I feel like is so binary that we've forgotten how to kind of live in the in-between, right? And this is where I'm always encouraging people. Let's live in this in-between space. I'm not talking about we're going to be way over here letting our kids fail entirely on their own and being like, well, 3-year-old, live and learn, right? And then we're also not going to be, as we sometimes term helicopter parents, hovering right over them to keep anything from ever happening, right? It's that kind of in-between space. The analogy I sometimes use with parents is, if you have your kid at a swimming pool and they're a little bit nervous of the water, we don't take the kid and throw him in the deep end, right? That's flooding, that's overwhelming. And we also don't say, "Oh, a swimming pool. Oh, come here, Johnny. Don't even look at it. We're just gonna make our way." I said the way we want to deal with it is we're gonna hop into the water and we're gonna say, "Hey, come on in when you're ready. Dip your toes, dip your feet. I'm here. Come on in with me." So I think that's the same way I think about when kids experience failure is to let them hurt. I think that's a really hard thing for parents.
So hard.
Yeah.
So hard.
Why? Why would you say that's such a hard thing? I don't disagree with you. I'm more interested in your take on the why there.
Well, you tell me. I'm looking at you, Kelly, because you said it hurts. Well, yeah, tell me.
Yeah, I think just because you don't want them to take away that they are a failure. And as someone who like I'm 36 and I just started getting the concept of, hey, it's okay to fail and the whole world doesn't come crashing down around you. I'm still not very good at that. As a kid, I thought if I got a bad score on a test, the world would come to an end, and that was just the inevitability of it. So I understand, I'm with you. I believe in that failure is necessary and you have to feel it and you have to do it. But just the scariness of, you don't want them to take away that they are a failure, because sometimes, depending on the kid, that is what they receive from it, and so there's that danger that there's the quality of the lesson, but also worrying that they will let it define them too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Kyle. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was when time allowed, I was going to circle back to your swimming lesson analogy, because the being thrown in the deep end is what they call a Saskatchewan swimming lesson, and how I so maybe I need to lay on the couch beside Corey and ask about that one.
It's getting weird, Kyle. It's getting real weird now.
Swimming lessons are laying on the couch with you, Corey. Yeah.
There's some trauma that's coming up here.
Oh, that's great.
Well, I never passed intermediate swimming, so I could become a lifeguard, but that was less about my ability and more about who got to be lifeguards in my town of 500.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. That's really great. That's really great. Well, to swing back around to your question, Corey, I think that I really hear what Kelly was saying, that we do fear that our kids experiencing failure might mean that they will think that they are. It's that like outcome versus identity, right? Like, hey, you tried, you failed. And I think so much of that is about how well we as parents can show up and be really big containers of our kids' emotions. And I go, and I know the listeners can't see me, but I do this thing when I talk to parents where I kind of put my arms out in a kind of a big circle in front of me and say, sometimes we're like a tiny little teacup, like we can only hold a little bit of our kids' emotions. And our job as parents is to be as big a container as we can to hold all of those experiences. And if that is deep sadness or that is rage and anger, and I'm not talking necessarily about saying any expression of the emotion is okay, right? Like that's where really good parenting comes in. And we say, you're allowed to be angry. You can't kick your brother because you're angry, right?
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes we tell kids, hey, stop being angry. Or we tell kids, this is how I grew up. I wasn't told directly your anger is too much for the family to hold, but it's not okay. It's making dinner really uncomfortable. So go to your room, right? Like I was often told to go to my room if I was angry. And I'm not talking about like, knocking over dishes at the dining room table, just being like, I don't like that, and it just was my family system. Anger was not okay. And so I was sent off to my room, but no one gave me any tools of what to do when I'm alone in my room. So what I learned as a kid is when you're angry and you're sent off, you're kind of excommunicated from the family, right? You're separated out. You go off to your room alone. I don't know, what do I do in my room by myself with my anger, except stuff it. And then once I've learned to sufficiently stuff down the anger to say, can I come back out? Have you calmed down? Yeah, I've calmed down. I haven't actually done anything with all that anger energy, right? And so one of the things I encourage parents to do is it's okay if a kid is being is upsetting the family dinner and that kid needs to leave, have them leave, just go with them. And let them know, like, you're really angry, right? Like, let's jog in place, or let's right, like whatever that energy needs to do to be worked through. And then once we're kind of where the kids doing better, let's go back, like let's reconnect with the rest of the family. So anyway, that's my thought around this idea of failure is, are we as parents big enough containers for all those different emotions that come with it? And my guess, Kelly, is like if we're really good at being big containers for emotions, kids can start to separate out, this is a feeling from this is who I am.
I am, yeah. Well, because I really, when you spoke earlier talking about what I do versus who I am, I think in particular in this, it's a worry that I have, because we live in a community where hockey is life and life is hockey, and it has so many good positive things. But these kids, they deeply identify as I'm a hockey player, and that's one of the most important things about me. And so that's a little bit where I get worried, is that while I love it and I love all the positives and I love all the wonderful things that come from it, I do worry about, I've even seen it, my husband coaches high school hockey. I've seen it in my own family members of when hockey ends, well, who am I now? Who am I now? That was who I was. Now I kind of have to figure out, because all 18 years of my life have revolved around this specific activity, and then where am I now? And that's where my worry comes in a little bit. Not that I want to discourage or take this from my kids, because it gives them so much joy, and it really does. They truly love it. I don't have to make them love it, but I do worry about where you touched on what I do versus who I am. And I do worry about that as well.
Kelly, it's
Which
really,
is,
Corey, go for it. Mine's an anecdote.
I was gonna, well, mine was too actually. So, but I'm gonna jump in ahead of you, which is kind of a nice tie-in to one of our running gags because this week's chirp of the week was my bantam player had a player on an opposing team chirp at him by saying, "You're never gonna get any college offers." So there you go.
What a terrible mean thing to say.
He didn't even know what to do with that one. He's like, "Oh, okay."
Maybe, I don't know.
The mine was roughly along similar lines in that I'm an adjunct at the local college here. We have a bunch of athletes in the course, and they're just handing in their finals now. And I asked one of them about their sort of an open-ended question about what their goals are in sports and how they're going to achieve it. And this is a very high-level hockey player, NHL draft pick. He wants to play in the NBA. 8 paragraphs about what he could do if given the chance to play in the NBA. He does not meet the height profile. And I was like, this is the best answer I've ever read because he's put a lot of thought into how he's going to get into the NBA. So speaking of completely does not clearly identify solely as a hockey player. He's a basketball player at heart. So it is possible to have both, I guess.
Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did any of you read Andre Agassi's book, Open?
No.
Fascinating book about how he was, Andre Agassi was, top of his game, top of the game, and hated the sport of tennis. Never wanted to play. I mean, it's just so fascinating. Anyway, that's such a departure. But like I was just thinking about like when somebody's so good at something, but then their heart is leaning, somewhere else. I just find that so interesting.
That if I could touch on, because kind of the one thing that I wanted to really ask you about, because it's kind of been like one of the things at the forefront of my mind here lately, specifically pertaining to child psychology with sports. Just kind of what you see with burnout and how you deal with that. Right now, our sons now are, well, I mean, we have multiple children, but the age group that we have in common of our kids are at the Pee-wee level. My son made the AA team, and it's just kind of changed everything this year in terms of like commitment. There's workout, there's tape, there's video, I mean, it's intensified a big jump from sports. And well, there's been a lot of positives with it. I guess what I just worry about is what you see as a psychologist with burnout, and then kind of, like what your advice is on that. Because I worry about, I think when I look at my husband's always been a hockey player since he's been a little kid. But when I look at what he did at 12 versus what our boy does at 12, I worry that as we're changing the game and doing these new things, is this a career for our kids before they have any business having a career? I guess that's why because anything that you do constantly, you will lose passion for at some point. That's my worry. Is this intensity at young ages. I don't want him to fall behind. And so there's that fear. But I also worry about, can he sustain this level of passion for this when he's so saturated in it? So I really wanted to touch on that with you and just what you see and what your advice is.
Oh, that's such a great question. Oh, this term burnout. We're just hearing it in so many different ways, like with kids, with professionals, with teachers, like people are just like, I can't anymore. And And as you were talking, my parents are both from the UK. They were born and raised in England. And I think about like how my mom in the UK, you have to choose like your area of study in really the beginning of high school. It's kind of like you're declaring a major um much earlier on, at least when they were growing up in the 50s, 60s. Um, and my mom really like she was good at science. And so she was kind of like funneled down this road of science, right? Like, and then ended up doing her PhD in chemistry. And then was like, oh, wait, I hate this. And then went back to get her MBA at the age of 40. And, it's like, oh, yeah, what happens when we encourage kids or like that we see something, right? We see something that they're gifted in, but then we make the road really narrow for them, right? And it's a fast road. So, the other thing I think about is that for all of us, we have what's called a window of tolerance. Are any of you familiar with this concept of like a window of tolerance?
Except for Kyle, I have no idea.
Corey has a small window of tolerance for Kyle, but other than that,
Oh my gosh.
And not for everybody, as I like to say.
Well, if you think about our nervous systems and, this autonomic nervous system that we all have, which really is about this idea of regulation um, and safety and connection and all these like wonderful things. And I'm going like this with my hands, like one on top of the other. And so if you kind of imagine like two lines, like railroad tracks, and the top line is just use really simple language. It's like the gas in our system, and then the bottom line are like the brakes in our system. And so, if we have a healthy window of tolerance, we can kind of go through our days kind of having a lot of gas in our system and then coming down and then going back up again. And then maybe having to stay on the upper part of our nervous system inside that window of tolerance and coming back down. And like when we're inside our window of tolerance, we can like be creative and do our best work and have a lot of resilience. Um, and we are really well connected to ourselves and to other people and the world around us. But what's true is when we have a lot of stress on the system and we rev up too much and we break outside that top bar of our window of tolerance, I say we pop outside the top part of it, we have too much gas in our system. And we kind of rev, right? And we're not able, like this is me driving home and there's ice on the road and all of a sudden my car starts to, like spin out and I'm like, I can feel my heart racing. And my stomach's clenching and my muscles go real tight, right? Like that's all a nervous system response. That's not me thinking through all those things. Our body just responds. And so when we are outside of our window of tolerance and our nervous system kind of gets stuck up there, that is when we have, you may have heard this term, a lot of people now are talking about the term like fight or flight. And so that's one version of burnout. Are those kids who just need to, like, they want to fight on everything, right? Like, you're just like, what, like, why is everything an argument? Or they want to just like not deal. They just want to avoid, right? Like that's another way of kids experiencing burnout. And it's because they have had just too much gas in their system. And it could be like they have a hard time handling pressure, they have a hard time handling stress, they have a hard time handling stuff that's going on at home, and then they got to show up and like mentally they're still dealing with their parents' divorce, and here they are showing up for practice, and and then they're like in this place of it's just too much. Now, we call that energy mobilized energy. That is energy that is meant to, it comes from a time when, you know, if you were being chased by an animal, you need all that mobilizing energy to get away and get yourself safe. But if you find that having all that fight or flight energy doesn't actually get you what you want, then typically what happens is kids will then drop out the bottom side of their window of tolerance. And that's when there's too much brakes in their system. They're coming out the other end, right? And that is like, I don't care. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go to practice today. I hate this sport. I hate you, right? And that's another form of burnout. And then what's also true is for some kids, their window of tolerance is real narrow. It doesn't take much before they're busting out the top or the bottom end of their window of tolerance. And I feel like our job as adults, when we're with kids, is to, as parents, as teachers, as a therapist, as coaches, is to help widen that window of tolerance for kids. So they don't have to feel burned out. They might feel like they have a lot of energy and we got to help them like have more regulation up and down. We got to rest and then we ramp back up, and then we rest and we ramp back up. And I think conceptually, that's how I think about keeping our kids out of burnout, widening that window of tolerance.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that so interesting because I mean, I had never really thought about that, but you hit it exactly with the either being on the hyped up version where, you know, you're acting on nothing but like push, and then the bottom, the follow, the I don't care, I don't want to do this, I don't want, and you know, we're going into the teenage years here. So I feel like that window of tolerance narrows. It'll come back a little bit, but you know, teenagers they're mostly intolerant of a lot, you know, in particular mom and dad, you know. So you know, we're so annoying. I get told that quite a bit here lately. You're so annoying, so annoying. And but yeah,
Oh, Kelly, it only gets worse, Kelly.
Oh.
It only gets worse.
I mean, I'm Corey. I keep thinking to myself, I'm like, you're 12, you know, like I can't possibly be annoying you this much. You wait how much I'm gonna annoy you, you know. But it yeah, I guess I worry about that because I do feel like there's more of a structuralized pressure on kids than we ever went through. You know, I was involved in things, but I never remember the intensity that, you know, like I remember having free time. I remember having days with nothing to do. And I feel like I sense sometimes a negativity in parents where they'll go, well, I don't want them to have all that free time. And I'm like, free time is what keeps me sane. You know? It always has, and it always, I mean, you just kind of need it. So I worry about like the hamster wheel that we put kids on, you know, and not that there aren't positives to the hamster wheel. There is truth to staying out of trouble, having purpose, making friends, you know, feeling good, having accomplishments. There's positives, but there's also the danger of, you know, you mentioned Andre Agassi. I played tennis. I was good at tennis. I hated tennis. You know, like that's where my fears come in as a mom, you know, like my children hating something that they even have talent for, but feeling that they can't express that, you know, or even feeling like that's not something that you can safely say out loud and then get through it, you know.
Yes, yes. And just I want to just stay on that point for 1 second more, which is sometimes our kids will tell us something because they so want us to be on the same wavelength with them. Like they're vibrating at a certain level, and if we come under that or way above it, it can feel too much or too little. And so kids will say like, I hate this. I hate this sport and I want to quit. And that might not actually be true.
Right.
It's just a way of saying, like, I don't know how to handle this moment.
Right, you nailed it, because that's where I fear is that it isn't true, but it's just the resentment in the moment, because it's they're little. It's a lot of responsibility at such a little age.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like the right response, or the response I would encourage from parents, is to be like, you're having a really hard time right now. Let's figure this out together. As opposed to kind of putting too much validity in that statement and being like, oh my gosh, my kid's gonna quit. What am I gonna, like becoming catastrophic about it, just like staying in the moment, right? Be a big container of that emotion and just being like, this is hard. Let's figure this out together.
You talk about controlling emotions and handling these things and being better. So it's funny we talk about all these things, and yet you hear in sports and you observe often a lot of contentious things coming from the stands with parents. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've never had these issues as well, because I do. Why is it so hard for us, other people, spectators in sport, to watch the game going on without having these outbursts? Maybe you're not happy with the way the official calls a play. Maybe you're not happy with what you perceive to be a dirty hit. Maybe you're not happy with the other team's parents, the way they're cheering or cheering against your kids. Why do we as parents get into these hot zones when we watch our children play sports?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love it. I don't know the answer. I'm going to tell you two things that I wonder are at play. One is when we're watching sports, there's this thing called a mirror neuron. Have you guys ever heard of a mirror neuron?
No.
Like if I got my water bottle here, right? Like, and it's got ice water in it. If I take a sip and and I swallow, like your bodies are probably going to be like, I know what that feels like, right? Like you can imagine yourself drinking that water because your mirror neurons are firing while I'm drinking, right? If somebody like slips and falls on ice, we're all like, ooh, like we do this kind of thing, right? Where we're like, oh, because we know what that might feel like. That's a mirror neuron. Well, when we're watching sports, just sports in general, our mirror neurons are firing. And we can say that we're just observing something, but we're not. Our bodies are actually responding to these plays in a very energetic way, right? So that's one thing. We're not watching it like we're watching a movie on a screen, right? Like there's something about watching and your own bodies are probably like, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to score that goal. I know what it feels like, when
Yeah.
I don't know the language of hockey, but all those things, right? And so that's one thing. The second thing is that's my kid. So like there is something biologically about the fact that it's our child on the ice. And as much as I'm encouraging, parents to like, create some form of separation, right? Like to see your kid as separate and different from yourself in a heated moment, that sense of empathy and connection is so strong that it may as well be me that is being told something or is being checked or whatever it is, right? And so everything just kind of like gets real big, especially if you don't have a sense of self-reflection. And I think that like I'm going to guess a lot of parents in those stands aren't in a place of self-reflection in that moment. Like I said, this is just a guess. I mean, this is the fun of dialogue is to hear other thoughts.
No, I agree. Like it's funny that you labeled that mirror neuron. We're talking about how we can watch a situation that we know and then be charged by that situation. It's something we've all felt, but to have a label on it, it makes sense to say that, because it's like you said, it's a shared thing to perceive how something feels, and then feed off of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true in sports, but I'll just say this, just before I got on this podcast, my husband on our huge screen TV was watching Snakes on a Plane. And my 11-year-old is watching, and she's like, what is that? Like, she came in like this, scary part. And she's like, turn it off, turn it off.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like, she's been on a plane. This is a horrific concept.
Terrible idea.
Right? Whose nightmare is that?
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm thinking to myself, well, there go, like, her mirror neurons are shooting off, and she's like, I can't bear this, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff, especially on the both my kids are goalies too, so that always feels like an urge to like stick an arm out to see if I can
Make the save.
make it safe. I usually now I know what to how to explain that a little better.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I tell you what, Alexis, we're coming up on our time here, so we don't want to keep you too late, obviously. Any kind of final thoughts for us? And you said you wanted to mention your give a little self shout out.
yeah. Well, first of all, just I love that you guys are doing this. I mean, what a gift to parents, to hear themselves
This says
reflected.
Kyle Kosher, gift to parents.
Gift to parents, but not for everyone.
That's what the backside says.
Also, not for everyone.
Yeah.
The fine print.
Big in Canada.
Well, first of all, just thank you for allowing me on, and what a fun group you are. Yeah, so what I wanted to share was, I had mentioned that I'd started this I have a new website called Campfire Family Coaching. One of the things that I am very interested in is, if I could just share a very quick story. I was, did you say no, Kyle?
Oh, I say, oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So
He
I was
actually said
getting-
no, but now he's backtracking.
Yeah.
Never.
Cut her off. By the way, I love that this is called After Dark, which is like, 12 hours. Like 12 or not. But anyway, my joke was that, like, it's after hours, which starts at 4 p.m.
Yes.
Or after dark. I'm sorry, after dark. Never mind, it's late for me. It's funny in my head. Okay, so my story I want to share is that I was getting certified in this certain kind of play therapy, and I had to record myself doing a play therapy activity with a child. And just like in, high school and college, this I had to record this thing and show it to my supervisor first thing Monday morning, and it's Sunday night. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't do this. And so I wake up my 11-year-old, right? And I'm like, get out of bed. I got to record you doing this activity with me. And she was like, okay. And so the activity is we had to draw a big heart and then make these little boxes along the side. And I said to her, tell me 10 feelings that 11-year-olds have. And so she names these feelings, and I write one feeling next to each of these boxes. And then I say, okay, now color in the box next to the feeling with a color that you think represents that feeling. And so she colors in, yellow for happy and pink for excited, and black for scared, and all these things. And then she does all these, and I say, okay, now fill in his heart to show me how much or how little of these feelings you have. And so she's coloring in the heart, and she's showing me, oh, I got a little bit of this in my heart, but I've got a lot of that color. And it was so fascinating. I mean, it was just so fascinating to see my own child represent all her emotions this way. And then she gets to the end of it, she goes, oh my gosh, how could I forget? 11-year-olds have anxiety. I didn't write down anxiety as one of my feelings. And she finished filling in the whole thing. So she's like, well, she flips it over. She draws a great big heart. And she says, now, Mama, the thing you need to know about anxiety, she says to the child therapist, is it's a very complex emotion. I was like, oh, is it? And she says, when it's opening night of a play I'm in, I'm anxious, but it's yellow anxious because I'm excited about going on the stage, but I'm nervous. And then sometimes there's dread. And so she's like coloring in black, and she's like, and then anxiety kind of pops. And so she's kind of making these popping things on this big piece of paper. I'm looking at this and I am like, my kid's internal landscape, right? This is her emotional landscape. And I'm like, this is just so fascinating. And I thought, if I can do this with my kid, I want other parents to be able to do this kind of thing with their own kids. I don't want them to have to go to therapy. I just want to be able to offer these kinds of play therapy activities that we do with kids in the therapy office, but have parents be able to lead it with their own kids. So anyway, all that to say, long story to say that I'm starting these groups.
That's great.
Middle school girls. I'm starting with middle school girls and their
Good luck.
moms.
Wonderful. What was the name of the website again, Alexis?
Campfire Family Coaching.
So when I put the episode out, I'll include all of that on there as well, just so people can track it down and find you easily. So
Yeah, and I'm doing a 1-hour free workshop so parents can get to know me a little bit. That'll be coming up January 15th, 17th. That's all on the website.
oh, wonderful. Okay, good deal. So yeah, so this will be out next week, so plenty of time for people to get after it.
And on my website, I have like little vouchers if kids want to print those out and put them in mom's stocking for, a little gift to do something like this together.
My boys aren't that thoughtful, but I appreciate you including that.
Never mind.
Other good kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That is awesome. Well, this has been really fun. I just want to do one last thing. Can I take a picture of all of us?
Heck yeah.
Get my cat in here too.
Yeah.
What the level of psychology you could go to for my codependency on my animals is just wild. So
Regular
Beautiful.
picture is free, an extra $2 if you want my good side.
Pets are some of our best co-regulators.
yeah. Oh, you like I said, and these two are not pet people, so they don't understand like these little furry people keep me functioning. So my house is just full of them. And they're usually nicer than my kids, so I need that.
We've got our dog, Mr. Belvedere, and we couldn't
Great
survive without him.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Well, Alexis, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Always nice to have a little change of pace from talking about tryouts and outdoor rinks. So it nice to do a little more highbrow for once.
Me, highbrow?
Yeah, or in Corey's case for the first time. So
yeah, I kept her above board, kind of.
No, thank you so much, Alexis.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you again for
Thank you.
Insightful and helpful. Like I said, I have an anxious kid, so it's really helpful, and it's sometimes just nice to know that this is something other people go through too. Because it can be overwhelming.
It can. I've got a lot of empathy.
Right, but such a worthwhile, amazing kid, but just this thing that he deals with, and so I just try. It's nice to talk to somebody to have tools that just help me to understand him better. So thank you. I so appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for telling me about him. Good. All right. Well, good night, everybody. Thanks again.
Enjoy your evening, Alexis, and
Good night.
Feel free to come back on anytime here. So I'll get all your information out and off we go.
Sounds great. All right. Be well, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Alexis. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good show, guys.
Yeah, I loved her. She was great.
nice lady and some good insight as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff she had in there. Talked about some of the dichotomies between your identity and your experience, and what you've achieved. I actually took about 3 or 4 pages of notes here, which for me is hard because writing words on paper is difficult for me. But yeah,
I feel like
letting.
Yeah, I kind of feel like stuffing you in a locker right now, Corey. Dial it back a little.
Letting kids hurt and some of the different the mirror neurons. There's a lot of good pieces out there. I can tell you plenty of stories from last weekend about things I wish I wouldn't have said, but we're not supposed to go there.
No. Jump in, roll around. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought it was insightful. I just kind of like how she touched on, I think those are things like, and I'm even bad at it too, with like figuring out where they are and their feelings and their thoughts, and just meeting them where they are. That's always something I have to work on as a mom, especially with Jet, because he's my kid that has to be met where he's at. And so it's just helpful. I don't know. I think that the psychological part of sports is something that just doesn't get talked about enough. But it's so big. And I think it's getting bigger and bigger. Because like she said, burnout is just like it's like an epidemic right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I go through it all the time, and it manifests itself in most of the time in self-sabotage. So, for every story you hear about a guy that's like, hey, I was just done playing, there's 10 more where they just like made it happen, but will never verbalize that they just found a way to be done.
Right, exactly. It's not always blatant quit it. It can be, like purposeful failure. Yeah. Where, like creating situations to be done with something that they want out of. And yeah, I think that's, I mean, so I was glad to do it because like I said, I just, I worry about that as a sport parent, just being mindful, especially as we're going into the teenage boys don't share my feelings years. What's wrong? Nothing. Okay.
Great. Bruh.
I don't know why you think I said that mean. I just said it was okay. You just don't understand. Oh, you're always mad at me.
Yeah, I know. Or like Jet's a champion of this one. Like if I'm having a hard day and I'm not showing it, but what's up with you? What's up with you? Why are you in a bad mood? I'm like, I'm not, but I'm getting there.
I'd like to draw my emotional heart because it would just say anger. Like the whole thing would be filled in anger all the time. He's always angry.
Black. Different
Dark
shades
like
of black.
Dead like my soul.
I'm gonna take a sec. Kelly, have you seen the giant cans of White Claw?
No.
They have White Claw and High Noon in like king cans now.
Are they
Force game the other day, and
like a baby keg or
it's almost like a Colt 40, the giant can of Colt 45. I saw it at a Fargo Force game, and I almost called because I thought, you know who would appreciate this? Kelly.
That's right.
Kyle, if you're going to talk about can size references, you have to meet her where she's at. So you can't drop Colt. You got to be like, Kelly, like a 4 Loco. That's the size. And she knows exactly what
I'm painting a mental picture. Yeah.
As the most streetwise of the crew, I thought I could drop Colt 45, but apparently not.
Yeah. Well, you might I mean, you could. I live on the north end, so that should paint a picture. So, yeah.
You might as well be talking about Hurricane Malt Liquor. She has no idea what you're talking about, Kyle. Hey, Kyle, that's a great transition. So Kyle dropped off in my mailbox a Icewind Brewing Pretty Mama Belgian Blonde. And we're both drinking the same thing. Kyle, this beer, it is fantastic.
Yeah. I didn't want to be a degenerate and drink it on the show, so I kept pouring into my water glass.
I just drank on the show because That's part of my emotional regulation.
Yeah.
So,
You have cats, I have booze, Kelly. That's
yeah,
how
I know.
take it.
I know. Then I've got my emotional support 14-year-old cat over here that I'm gonna force to live forever. Yeah, it's just so much for her to dig into, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Kelly, I like you're trying to like very casually push that cat out of screen and then just gave up.
and he's so aggressive. Like he loves me to a point of aggressive, and it's yeah, like he doesn't take no for an answer. Kind of like Matt Moreland. So
You're like a middle school boy at a movie.
Yeah. Kyle, so Icewind is out of Mapleton, North Dakota, huh?
Sure.
Yeah, these guys could be a sponsor. This was some. I don't know what you thought. This
where do
was
we find
very
this?
good.
Because Matt Moreland will be interested.
I have one in the fridge and I will drop it off at his house because if I can tell a brief anecdote, I dropped a beer off for Corey after school. I saw his kid in the driveway. I'm like, here, kid, take this beer to your dad.
He knows where it goes.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
His neighbor kid was standing up watching the transaction, same age. And I was like, yeah, I'm leaving this poor kid. I'm surreptitiously bullying this kid. And so I had to drive by. I'm like, I'll bring one for your dad later. And took off.
I'm coming back for your dad.
And I
Hey,
did. So
I'm gonna text your dad about that beer so he knows it exists.
there's one more left in my garage and I will bring it to Matt. Then
Okay.
I got a Fuller too. You know, it's a whole thing.
I feel like this beer is pretty on brand for us, being called Pretty Mama, and we deal with Mom Island. So it's right there.
And
Yeah.
Belgians, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of pretty mamas, Kyle, it's probably about that time we talk to people about the Andrews Construction Services.
Let's hear it.
Segue.
Big way.
Andrews Construction Services, with 20 years of experience in commercial contracting. They do dental offices, schools, retail space, auto body shops, all phases of construction from initial design all the way through completion. They have 20 years of experience with commercial contracts. You dream it, they can make it a reality. You want your next construction project to be a breeze? Call them up at Andrews.
I had the good fortune to see some construction photos from the proprietor of Andrews Construction Services this evening. Really nice stuff, like a proud papa.
Oh, that's so nice.
We reached the age where we're showing construction photos to each other, not girl chicks we like.
So you're not sending photos like a certain Bina sends to me in text messages where I get scared every time I push the okay, I'll look at this picture button. But that's a story for another day.
What am I gonna open? What am I opening here?
It'll be too late for anyone to do anything about this by the time the episode is released, but that's my pitch for the next episode. Mr. and Mrs. Bina.
Mr. Tony.
Oh. Yeah.
Mr.
Nice.
Anthony Bina.
Yeah.
I'm
So
100%.
outdoor rinks and
You had
steak.
me at Bina.
Yeah.
You had me at Bina because there's not a one of the gang that I don't like.
Yeah.
I have a firm belief. No such thing as a bad Bina. All right. I'll take a t-shirt with that on it.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's a pecking order. Like, do we have to start with Tony? Could we maybe get Aaron? Like, can we go a little higher on the Bina list?
For the 100th episode, we'll rank the Binas.
I live by Robbie, so I could probably get, there's a connection there.
Why are we shooting so low with bringing Tony on first?
Hey, listen, that guy's seen some stuff. And as an athletic director, he's really seen some stuff. So
He
might
has
be
stuff.
getting one.
Yeah. Yeah. Just we could just AD stories. And then I was thinking about following up with Gino Gasparini to tell college hockey stories from 1981 where there are no rules.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
Trixie Gasparini was my health teacher.
Yeah. Our producer had the same health teacher.
Yes, she's the best. So those Gasparinis, good crew.
Fun anecdote. Tootsie once asked me to very politely to not play lawn darts around her kids. I was playing with her kids. No lawn darts around the grandkids.
Well, all right.
But in a very nice Tootsie way.
Yeah, I know. She's a doll. Such a sweet lady.
Tremendous lady. Any parting thoughts? So we got White Claw, then we got double Belgian mamas.
Yeah. My final thoughts are this is probably our last release before Christmas, or are we doing another one right before
I
Christmas?
think we can record the Bina one next, and then we can release it between Christmas and New Year's. Let
Wonderful.
the
Well,
Binas be the last thing you hear in 2023.
Right.
oof, oof.
Tony B. The sweet, angelic voice of Tony B.
Yeah.
Well, so my final thoughts are wishing you both a Merry Christmas. Hope you guys have some great time with family.
Corey
Uh,
skipping
other,
the Tony episode.
other than Venus.
No, great episode. I thought I like to look at all the facets of hockey and like I said, I'm what you call a psychologist's dream. Because there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack. All right.
Um, the last psychologist that I ever talked to was a good friend of mine who also went into child psychology. And while she was in her studies, she used me as a guinea pig to learn from. And her only words to me was, "You have a lot of problems, Corey." A lot of problems.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
There's,
Wow.
there is a spectrum of disorders, and you're hammering. I feel like you're literally like throwing darts, Corey.
Listen,
Oh, I'm sorry, Callie. Go ahead.
anxiety could be my middle name. I made the reference yet when somebody said, "You're not anxious, are you?" And I said, "Oh no, I can only do things like get myself literally nauseous over like remember that time in third grade when you had to lead the prayer to St. Michael at school and you yelled into the microphone? Let's mentally tear ourselves apart and give ourselves a stomach ache over that." So that's where I am. So like I said, there's a lot to unpack here. I could keep Alexis busy for many, many hours. So
I lost a baseball when I was 6. I'm still upset about that. But
exactly.
suppose I would like to tell a Regina story because I also used to talk to psychologists because in Regina, at the University of Regina, if you wanted to meet, let's call them available girls, you would go to the psychology mixers.
What are unavailable girls, Kyle?
Ones that girls from Saskatoon, they don't mix. But the Psychology Students Association had a lot of mixers. It was populated with a lot of available girls from Regina, and I frequented a lot of them.
What
So
Kyle figured out is those psychology girls, they love the guys that there's a lot to unpack, all right? they're going into that for a career. They love that shit, you know, like they're like, tell me more about your childhood trauma. I want to.
I'd show up with a Coke and have you seen my baseball? I lost it when I was 6 and then burst into tears every time.
He's so broken. God, I love him.
I can fix him.
Oh, that's sexy.
I don't know what to say about that. I've got like 13 jokes, and this isn't that after dark of a show.
Hey, listen. Different kinks for different folks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's again.
Try to
We're
tell.
right back to psychology.
Brought a baseball into it, and Corey's still not happy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I was going to make a something about Mary joke, but I just didn't think it was the right time.
Gonna tuck that one down deep inside.
Yeah. You know, I like to put some of my really off-color jokes with my anger, as she said, and I tuck it way down.
Yeah.
And then my anger comes out all the time anyways. So I'm angry about everything.
But not Icewind Brewing.
No, this is delicious. I'm telling you, Kyle, what a winner. You picked a winner.
Yeah.
And a winner of a guest. I really liked Alexis. Yes. I would have her back. That was wonderful. And I will be checking out her website because I like her philosophies.
Yeah. Campfire Family Coaching. I'll put it up and encourage everyone to check it out. Talk about baseballs you lost when you were 6. Good stuff. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the show. I hope everyone enjoys their evening in this nice warm weather we're having and hopefully having when the episode's released. But I would also like my rink to freeze. Thank you very much.
Both of you are waiting on your ODRs. So.
I've got 5 inches of ice already, Kyle.
Oh, you might.
I don't believe it.
Yeah. North facing house. Put it out front of the house. No sun hits my rink.
Oh, I got a lot of sun. All right.
at the Fabian Irian Iceplex.
Oh, no. At the Hills Arena.
The hill. Oh, that's right. Eric named it. I forgot. Okay. The Hills are.
Didn't name it.
Oh, I thought you came up with that.
Eric takes credit for everything just because he's tall and good looking. This is ridiculous.
It was not Eric.
Yeah, technically he did name it though.
Well, now that we've descended into madness, let's cut it off.
Sounds good.
Guys.
All right. Have a nice evening. Thanks for
See you guys
You too.
tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You there?
We'll see
Okay.
you.
First official meeting.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.